Welcome to Middle Class Millionaire, where mindset meets money. Let's grow together.
Okay, so when you picture a millionaire, what's the first thing that flashes into your mind? Is it someone stepping off a private jet, maybe designer clothes, flashy sports cars all around?
Yeah, for most of us, that's kind of the image, right? Hollywood's been drilling that into our heads forever. But here's something really eye-opening. The core idea from this book, The Millionaire Next Door. Thomas Stanley and William Danko put it right out there. Most people who become millionaires do not look the part. So this deep dive, it's really your shortcut to kind of dismantling those myths and getting the real story on wealth building. It's definitely not about the glitz and glam. It's about this massive, 20-year research project. And it doesn't just challenge those Hollywood ideas, it pretty much flips them upside down. We're talking actual data here.
Absolutely. And Stanley and Danko, they weren't just, throwing ideas around. Their method was solid, really rigorous. They spent 2 decades surveying over 1,100 high net worth households all across the U.S. Mm-hmm. Their whole goal was just to map out the actual behaviors, the backgrounds, the real balance sheets of people who genuinely had a net worth of $1 million or more, trying to figure out who really has the wealth, not just who's good at looking like they do.
And the examples they found in the real world are just, they're amazing. They almost sound fake. Forget the slick hedge fund guy. Picture a welding contractor, buys his suits off the rack, drives the same old pickup for a decade.
Yeah, or the owner of a small dry cleaning chain. Still clips coupons, still lives in the starter home she bought way back when, 1978, I think it was. Mm-hmm. They even talked about a small town scrap metal dealer worth maybe $1.6 million who barely ever takes more than a week off. These kinds of surprising facts are really just scratching the surface of what we're going to get into today about wealth. Right. And if you connect the dots, what you see coming out of all this detailed research are these really consistent patterns.
Yeah. Behaviors
that lead to actual financial independence. So this deep dive, it's going to challenge you, definitely, but in a good way, make you rethink what wealth looks like and, crucially, how it's actually built.
Okay, so we started peeling back that shiny layer, the illusion of wealth. But how do these invisible millionaires actually do it? How do they get so financially independent? What are those quiet habits, the disciplines that maybe we overlook? Maybe let's start with who they really are. The research showed, pretty strikingly, 80% are first-generation affluent.
Mm-hmm. 80%.
Which means, fewer than 20% inherited a big chunk, 10% or more of their wealth. Their median income, taxable income, was $131,000, median home value around $320,000, but that was back in 1996 dollars, right? And get this, only 17% went to private schools. Over half, 55% of their kids went to public universities.
Yeah, that's a really powerful point. The authors, they flat out say these folks are the blue-collar wealthy, not the blue-blood wealthy. Now, okay, maybe $131,000 median income doesn't sound exactly blue-collar to everyone today, but the book stresses it's about their work ethic, their values, the self-made journey. It wasn't inherited fortunes or fancy backgrounds. They built it. Hard work and some very specific disciplined habits.
That distinction really clicks. Okay, so what's habit number 1? What's the first big thing the authors found that sets these people apart?
Well, interestingly, it kind of boils down to this acronym they use, FRUGAL. And it's more than just, saving pennies. It's a whole mindset shift about what's important. The F is for living well below their means. Sounds simple, right? But not many people actually pull it off consistently. R means they allocate their resources, time, energy, money, really efficiently towards building wealth. They treat it strategically. It's huge. They genuinely believe financial independence is way more important than showing off high social status. G, their parents didn't provide what the book calls economic outpatient care.
Economic outpatient care? What's that?
Basically, big financial handouts to adult kids. We'll dig into that more. It has some pretty big effects.
Yeah.
A means their adult kids are standing on their own 2 feet financially. And L, they're good at spotting market opportunities. They know a good deal when they see one.
FRUGAL. Okay. That seems so basic, but like you said, so many struggle with it. What's the deeper change needed, psychologically maybe, to really live that way?
It's like flipping the consumer mindset completely on its head. That you valuing independence over status, that might be the core of it. It shows that real wealth isn't about the stuff you can show off. It's an internal thing, a commitment to long-term security, which is frankly pretty rare these days. And to kind of measure this frugality, they came up with this really powerful metric. It sorts people into 2 groups. Prodigious accumulators of wealth, PAWs, they call them, and under accumulators of wealth, or UAWs.
PAWs and UAWs. Okay.
Right. And here's how you can figure out your own millionaires ratio. See where you might fall. You take your age, multiply that by your realized pre-tax income, so what you actually earn before taxes. Then divide that whole thing by 10. If your actual net worth is equal to or more than that number, congratulations, you're tracking like a paw.
Okay, let's make that concrete. So if someone is, say, 50 years old.
Yeah, see, 50 years old, earning $100,000 a year pre-tax, 50 times 100,000 is $5 million. Divide by 10. That person should have a net worth of at least $500,000 to be considered a paw.
$500,000, okay.
And the really shocking thing, the research found fewer than 1 in 4 American households actually hit that paw benchmark. So remember that formula, age times income divided by 10. Simple calculation, but tells you a lot about financial discipline.
That really cuts through a common excuse, doesn't it? You hear high earners, UAWs maybe, say, oh, I just don't have time to manage my money. But the data, it seems to show something very different about how paws use their time. What did they find there? How much time are we talking?
Oh, it's a huge difference. Paw Ws, on average, spend about 8.4 hours a month actively planning their investments.
Yeah.
UAWs. They average only 2.7 hours a month.
Wow, less than 3 hours versus over 8.
Exactly. That's almost a 3-to-1 ratio. And that difference may be 5 or 6 hours a month. It doesn't sound like a lot day to day.
Yeah.
But over decades, with compounding, that's where those 7-figure gaps come from.
Yeah.
There's another angle here that really changes how you think about wealth staying power. Household operating efficiency. Basically, how much of their net worth do they spend each year? Paw Ws, on average, spend about 1.5% of their net worth on annual consumption. UAWs, it's more like 3% to 4%.
So double or even more.
Yeah. And again, it seems like a small percentage difference, right? 1.5%, he has 3%. But over 30 years, that difference also compounds to potentially an extra $1 million saved just from spending efficiency. The book talks about this couple, Mr. and Mrs. Rule. They own a pest control business, net worth $2.3 million. They have a monthly budget meeting. Over coffee, kitchen table. Takes exactly 42 minutes. They go through every single line item, gas, groceries, gifts, everything. They call it playing great defense.
Playing great defense. I like that.
Oh.
Okay, and then there's the car thing. Everyone talks about this part of the book. The authors asked, 733 millionaires about the last car they bought? And the results just blow away what you see in movies or ads. A huge chunk, 37% bought used cars, just paid cash, and 44% bought new, okay? But then they kept the car for at least 10 years. Only 23%, less than a quarter of millionaires actually drive the current year's model. That just shatters the image, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And look at the brands they prefer. Ford was number 1, 9.4%. Then Cadillac, Lincoln, Jeep, Mercedes-Benz, and BMW, way lower down the list, around 5-6% each. So yeah, it completely demolishes that idea that a fancy luxury car is standard issue for millionaires. In fact, the authors found those status artifacts, the expensive boats, the European sports cars, the high-end watches. Overwhelmingly, those things show up on the balance sheets of UAWs, not PAWs. One millionaire in the book just nailed it pretty bluntly. A Lexus is a $40,000 Toyota with a $30,000 ego tax.
Ouch. Yeah, it makes you really wonder about all those luxury cars you see on the road, who's actually driving them and if they're financially solid. Okay, let's shift gears a bit. This next finding is maybe even more surprising. How financial help from parents can actually backfire, can hold back wealth creation. You mentioned economic outpatient care earlier, EOC. These substantial gifts or subsidies to adult kids, and the data here is, well, it's pretty harsh, isn't it?
It is. The numbers are stark. Adult children who get regular cash gifts, say $15,000 or more a year, they end up with a net worth that's 57% lower, on average, than their peers who get nothing.
57% lower. Why? What's going on there?
Well, the research points to a few things, like 46% of adult kids getting this EOC still live really close to mom and dad, within 30 miles. And those getting EOC are 2.5 times more likely to be carrying credit card debt. The authors call it artificial support. They argue it basically weakens a person's financial immune system.
Yeah.
They don't build resilience. The antidote, according to the millionaires they talk to, teach self-sufficiency early. There's one millionaire couple in the book, their only big financial gift to their kids is tuition for a state university. That's it. After graduation, the safety net disappears. You're on your own.
Tough love, but maybe effective love in the long run. Okay, so beyond spending discipline and careful parenting, there's another big theme, the affluent entrepreneur. A surprising number, 2/3, 66% of the millionaires studied are self-employed business owners. But again, probably not the kind you first imagine. Not necessarily slick tech founders. The top industries are things like welding contractors, auctioneers, rice farmers, people owning mobile home parks, paving companies, often what the authors called dull, normal businesses.
Yeah, exactly. Dull normal. And what's key is why these businesses work. They usually serve a real existing need that maybe isn't very glamorous, so there's less competition. The barriers to getting in are often about specific knowledge or a skill, not necessarily huge amounts of capital. Think about it. Getting a pest control license might cost, what, $500? Getting a law degree could run you $150,000 plus. And despite what you might think, these business owners, they aren't usually reckless gamblers. On a risk scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being super risky, the average millionaire entrepreneur rated themselves at 2.4. Pretty moderate. They take calculated risks, yeah, but in areas they really understand and have some control over.
They really find their niche, yeah. The book talks about these average millionaires. A mobile home park owner, net worth $2.4 million. A paving contractor, $3.1 million. And these niches, they seem to share some traits, like a big potential market, but lots of small players, fragmented. Needing specific technical know-how, not fancy degrees usually. Relatively low startup capital needed compared to the cash flow they can generate. And crucially, the owners reinvest the profits back into the business, not into buying more fancy stuff for themselves. The authors had a great phrase, go to work for yourself, but not by yourself. Meaning you capture the upside without needing venture capital or outside investors calling the shots.
And this leads to a really interesting contrast when you look at the jobs of self-made millionaires versus those who inherited their wealth. For the self-made group, top jobs are like business owner, senior corporate exec, doctor, lawyer. Makes sense. But for the heirs, the number one occupation by a long shot is retired, 44%. Then corporate exec, homemaker. So heirs are basically 3 times more likely to be retired at any given age compared to the first-generation millionaires. What that suggests is, for the self-made folks, work is part of their risk management, part of their wealth building. For heirs, maybe work is more optional.
That really drives the point home. So how does all this connect back to, like, your personal finances day to day? Cash flow, wealth. The book breaks down the finances of a guy named Mr. W.W. Allen. He's a 61-year-old auctioneer, makes about $92,000 a year income, but his net worth is $3.2 million. And his monthly cash flow statement is super revealing.
It really is. The order he does things in is critical. Income comes in, first thing out, taxes, then giving, charity, then living expenses. And then after all that, a really big chunk goes straight into investments. Even at his stage, he's still socking away 30% of his gross income for investment. 30%. It perfectly shows that key principle. Millionaires pay themselves first, meaning their investments, but only after taxes and charity. Lifestyle comes after saving, not before. They also mentioned a simple rule of thumb. Try to keep your total mortgage balance below 2 times your annual income. Mr. Allen. His mortgage was 0.
Zero mortgage. Wow. Okay. And just to remind everyone, this whole picture, it's not just anecdotes. It's built on serious research. The authors mailed out thousands of questionnaires, did hundreds of in-depth interviews, checked tax records, probate records. It was thorough. They do admit limitations, right? Like the sample leaned towards white, male, older individuals.
Yes, they acknowledge that. But they strongly argue, and I think the data supports it, that the behavioral patterns they found, the frugality, the planning, the business choice, these tend to hold true across different demographics. The principles are universal.
So the big question then is, how can you, the listener, actually use this, apply it?
Right. And Thomas Stanley, one of the authors, he aptly shared these 7 wealth-building commandments he'd tell his own kids around the dinner table. Things like, always live below your means, allocate your time and money efficiently, believe financial independence is better than showing off status. Don't let your kids know you're wealthy until they're established themselves. Definitely don't provide that economic outpatient care. Teach discipline, accountability. Stanley himself apparently drove a 10-year-old Ford Crown Vic, still clipped coupons. And his son, who's a public school teacher, reportedly had a net worth higher than 75% of American households. It's proof that the formula can work for anyone willing to follow it.
It really comes back to what the authors wrote, and it sums it all up perfectly. Wealth is more often the result of a lifestyle of hard work, perseverance, planning, and most of all, self-discipline.
So as you think about everything we've covered in this deep dive, the authors leave you with a pretty direct challenge, a provocative question. Will you choose to be the millionaire next door or the debtor next door? And maybe to help you process that, think about 3 key questions they raise, not just for now, but ongoing. 1, what's your millionaire's ratio? Remember, age times pre-tax income divided by 10. Where do you stand as a potential PAW? For example, that 50-year-old earning $100 needs $500K in net worth to be a prodigious accumulator. 2, are you paying yourself first funding your future, or are you paying your lifestyle first? Be honest. And 3, looking ahead, will your children likely become PAWs, prodigious accumulators, or UAWs under accumulators of wealth, based on what you're teaching them, what you're modeling?
Good questions. And maybe keep the answers private for now. You know, stealth wealth starts with silence.
Yeah.
But let the action speak volumes. Clip the coupons if it helps. Drive the used car. Max out that 401k or retirement account. Reinvest every dividend. Because the next millionaire next door, well, it could absolutely be you.
Thanks for tuning in to Middle Class Millionaire. Subscribe now and keep building your wealth, one thought at a time.